All right, I think it's on. We're on YouTube. And now I'm going to attempt to be on. Oh, I guess it's only allowing me to do YouTube, not YouTube and Facebook. All right. So I think it's on. We're on YouTube. Oh, and now the only issue is. And now I'm going to be on. Oh, I guess it's only allowing me to do YouTube, not YouTube. All right. It decided to play.
Yeah, it will play with a little bit of a lag, so you'll have to mute that window.
Okay. I just did that. All right, so I'm going to start recording and then take it away, Vanessa.
Welcome to the Divine Feminine panel discussion. I'm so excited to be here with you all. And before we begin, I would love to just take a couple of minutes to settle in and do just a really short meditation to get us started. So if you'd like to just maybe feel into your body and see what needs to move. Maybe you need to shake your shoulders a little or roll your head. Maybe just really find a comfortable place on whatever you're sitting on. Stretch your arms. And when you feel really comfortable, I'll invite you to close your eyes if that feels good, or perhaps just have a soft gaze. And then begin to deepen your breath and slow your breath. And if it feels good to have a hand on your heart, and maybe your other hand over your belly, I invite you to do that and just feel what it feels like to be holding yourself, to be holding your heart, and holding your belly. What does it actually feel like in your body? And as your breath deepens, feel the air flowing into your body all the way down into your lower abdomen. And feel as the air exits your body. And as you're taking a few deep belly breaths, I invite you to place both feet on the floor if you can, and place your attention on the weight of your feet on the surface of the floor. What does that feel like? What does the floor or the ground or the carpet or whatever is beneath your feet? What are the sensations of your feet on the floor? And as your attention is moving to the soles of your feet, I invite you to imagine opening to the energy of the earth beneath you and feeling the soles of your feet being connected to the earth and the energy of Mother Gaia beneath you, supporting you, holding you at all times. And allow her energy to come up through the soles of your feet Feel her energy flowing into your body, up through your feet, through your calves, through your thighs, up into the bowl of your pelvis. Feel her energy filling the cradle of your pelvis and flowing up through your torso, up into your heart space. Feel the energy of Mother Earth filling your heart space, continuing to flow up through your throat, into your head, filling your entire body. And feel her energy coming out the top of the crown of your head and spilling out over your body. And feel her soothing energy bathing you completely inside and out. And as her energy spills down over the outside of your body, imagine it expanding outward. Expanding outward so far that you can feel the connection with each one of us here today, together in this space live, as well as those of you watching the recording. Feel that energy that is coming up through your body, expanding outside of your body, connecting with all living beings. I invite you to just feel into what that feeling feels like. What are those sensations? What are the sensations in your body as you feel the connection between Mother Earth and yourself and all others? And I invite you to take a few more deep breaths into that feeling. And I invite you to hold on to that feeling throughout our time here together and throughout your day. And as you continue to breathe deeply, I invite you now to come back to the present moment, come back to this space here together with us, and maybe wiggle your toes a little bit, wiggle your fingers, move your body a little bit, maybe your shoulders, wiggle your shoulders as you're coming back. And when you're ready, slowly, gently opening your eyes. Thank you for that lovely time together in meditation. And now I would love to introduce you to our Divine Feminine panelists for today. And I will begin with Catriona Blanke, whose talk title for the Divine Feminine Week was Traces of Her, telling stories about the Divine Feminine. Welcome, Catriona.
Hello, and hello everyone watching live or later in some distant future. It's so lovely to be here.
So lovely to have you. And we also have Jennifer Ruth Russell, and her talk was entitled Flourish in the Heart of Mother Mary. So happy to have you here, Jennifer.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. All of you beautiful women. Thank you.
We also have Michele Dench. The title of her talk for the Divine Feminine Week is Remembering the Heart of the Feminine. So nice to have you here, Michele.
So good to be with you, Vanessa, and all of my feminine counterparts in this beautiful panel. Thank you.
We also have Michele Cipressi, and the title of her talk for this week was Connecting with the Divine Feminine Through Art as Process. Welcome, Michele.
Oh, you're muted.
You're muted, Michele.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. That was such a beautiful meditative opening. Thank you for that. Thank you everyone for being here live and later, and I'm so happy to be here.
And I'm Vanessa Nixon. My talk this week is entitled Belly Dance as a Sacred Practice. And of course, I'm so honored to be co-facilitating this discussion with Martha Alter Hines, who is the creator of this incredibly wonderful event. Martha, welcome.
Thank you. I don't know if I would call it creator, space holder. Space holder. Yeah, thank you. So good to be with everybody. And so I wanted, on a practical note, say that all of these talks are still available. They're available forever, as long as Teachable exists, YouTube exists, they exist. So, and they're free, and take your time. There's no rush, and just go with what calls to you in any moment. So there are currently 12 talks total that are available, and the next set come out on Sunday, which is going to be the Divine Masculine talks. But before we go into this conversation, I just want to take a moment to also just consciously call in the Divine Feminine, the Divine Masculine, the Divine Person, all of us, all of ourselves and our beings into this conversation. I want to make it really clear that even though the people who happen to be on this panel, I think we all identify as, I'm just assuming, I don't know, I could be wrong. I think we identify mostly as cisgender women. And, you know, in the future conversations like this, I would really love to bring in people of more gender identities into each of these conversations, because I feel sad that we're here about to talk about the Divine Feminine and we all happen to be women, which is not bad. It's just, I'm noticing feeling sad about it in this moment, and I want to name that. But here we are. So we welcome questions, we welcome comments in the chat, we welcome questions and comments in the future. Please, this is a global conversation, literally, and it's an ongoing one. But to start today, what I'm feeling is I would just love to have us each drop into our hearts, and Vanessa has already beautifully helped us to ground into our bodies and with the earth. And I'd love to start hearing from each of you on the panel. What is alive for you in this moment with regard to the Divine Feminine, and even just with regard to the whole topic of healing our relationships to gender and sexuality? It doesn't have to, we don't need to stay narrowly on the Divine Feminine. Just, yes, that is our main topic today, but it's all intertwined, which is kind of the whole point here. So does one of you feel called to go first, or do you want me to just go around the circle? Catriona.
Sure, I'll go because I'm buzzing at the moment.
Awesome.
What's alive for me in this instant is a very wild and raw and naughty energy. I was sharing with the other panelists before everyone arrived. I've just become the guardian of a little dog, and it's all new to me, and we were just caught in a rain shower, and planning timings is all over the place at the moment, and I just made it to the discussion, and I was like, oh, and I'm not dressed, and I haven't put up my beautiful background, and I was like, I do not give a rat's something, and I will just show up. And that to me is something that's very present in my life at the moment. Kali energy, wild energy, just and done with being so careful and so polite and so, so nice all the time, even if it isn't my truth at the time. And that to me is there's something that I connect very strongly with the divine feminine in that.
Beautiful. Thank you. So yeah, what I'm thinking is we could just go around the circle and name what is alive, and then we'll obviously interweave. And if you feel like called to speak to what Catriona just said, that's great too. But I would love to give each of you a chance to, Jennifer.
I'll go next. Thank you, Catriona, for just giving us permission to be just naked, in the rain. I love it. What's up for me is just been really asked to look at the places where I set myself apart. And I mean that in the way of, I'm a spiritual leader. So how many times am I not in the conversation when it's not a spiritual conversation? I'm a vegan. How many times do I go and have a meal with somebody that's not a vegan? And I just recently moved to the south of the United States. So I'm in a very conservative area, and, it's Pride Month. And it's amazing the conversations that are going on. And I'm like, what's up for me is to stay curious and stay in the conversation, stay, get off of the mountain, and come really into the village and sit in the square and have the conversations that are going on. I love that it's Pride Month, and I love that everyone is talking about it in a very different world than we are right here, really spiritually focused and really focused on the divine feminine. The church where I'm a musical director, they're the minister really wants to put in unisex bathrooms, and, the conservative board is just like, we're not that inclusive, and it's just that's what's up for me, is to really stay curious and stay in the conversation and don't set myself apart, because this is like a huge change for us right now. I feel it like this is the age of Aquarius, the age of freedom and justice, and everything that has been suppressed has to rise up now into freedom. And I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be with all of you two today.
Thank you. Yes. We can come back to so many of these themes, but I'll just say yesterday, Vanessa and I were with a group of beautiful humans for the community sharing time, and I won't go into any confidentiality issues here, but just to say in a broad stroke that one of the themes that definitely arose was we were talking about, maybe it was in the evening, in one of the two conversations, there was a theme about polarity, and actually it was the evening one, the need to hold all of it, and how a lot of us keep feeling like there is this tendency, or it can feel very tempting, that's the word, it can feel very tempting to polarize and get rid of certain things or certain people or certain groups of this or that. And then a lot of us were sitting with this feeling that we just keep getting guided to come back to the wholeness, which clearly is also related to the theme of this whole symposium. But that there's this one, I would call it in myself, like the human side, quote unquote, that wants to be done with this or that thing. And then I go into my prayers, and I keep getting brought back to come back to the love, come back to the wholeness. It's not actually what you want to, do this thing. So that's a theme that's definitely been alive through a lot of what people have been commenting on, and definitely alive in me. Who would like to go, Michelle or Michelle?
I'm number 2 if we're counting the L's.
Oh yeah, it's 2 L's. Yes.
But I can go. I feel what you've been articulating Martha, and what I've heard everyone speak to thus far really speaks to the astrological phenomenon of this present moment, which is that Venus in Leo is moving to square the nodal axis in the next couple of hours today, and she will. I think it perfects around 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. But
how did I not notice this?
right? It's such a powerful thing. We've been so focused on, at least for me, astrologically, Pluto squaring the nodes, which is a much slower, more evolutionary transit. It takes, 250 years for Pluto to transit a sign. But in this case, Venus moves much faster, and she is present in everyone's chart, regardless of gender expression or identity. And I think of Leo as being our creative self-expression, right? And the square reflects the crisis of consciousness, that we have to work with these seeming polarities. And here she is at the apex of two polarities, right? Taurus and Scorpio in an astrological sense. But I think that really shows, like, whatever is emerging in our lives that is requiring us to change because of the individual impulse to create a new relationship to self is going to be a part of the empowering of our spirit, our feminine spirit, and that essence comes through everyone, regardless of their gender. And then the other thing that was alive for me when you were speaking about the cisgender identification, in terms of the Divine Feminine panel, and I felt the grief that you're expressing, is that I actually don't know that I would identify as a cisgender woman, but that has definitely been the identity given to me. Mm-hmm. And that's a part of the deconstruction of our societal conditioning and ideas around embodiment and sexuality. And, when I allow myself to be curious about what I am, I don't know that is the identity that I carry, but and I certainly trust that wherever that identity has been placed upon me, there's going to be a lot of stuff, for me to unpack. And so anyway, I just want to presence that. And thank you. Thank you for being here.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I cannot believe I did not notice that Venus is squaring the nodes while at the moment we're having a panel discussion on the Divine Feminine.
It's so beautiful. Resolution node in this case is the North Node in Taurus. And Vanessa started us off with this embodiment practice, which is such a beautiful thing to really drop into how slow we need to be with ourselves in order to ask these questions, in order to deconstruct our identities, in order to face what it wants to emerge inside. We actually have to slow down. We have to be present with the body. And the body is not the identity placed upon the body. The body is the temple that the soul is residing in at this time, so.
Beautiful. And then I'm reflecting, just again, to go on the tiny bit more of an astrological tangent. So then, of course, Venus has just passed its opposition to Pluto, right? And so if anybody, I'll speak for myself, if anybody's feeling some intensity, some deep soul level intensity around relationship, around what it means to be relating to others, all of the above, that would help explain some things. Yeah.
And I think of this like Taurus Scorpio axis as like very much Venusian and masculine, Venus, Mars, Venus, Pluto, sexuality, embodiment, presence. And then if we think of Leo and Aquarius, it's the axis of self and other, self and community, self and social world. So to imagine that those polarities being really activated, and the dance that we're doing between transforming those angles within ourselves, within our consciousness. And then in a few days, it'll be Venus squaring Jupiter, right? Expanding that, all that has to do with our physical and financial security and, you know, our relationship to resources. And those things are all up in the field. So
Yeah, and I'll add in one theme also that came up in one of the conversations I had yesterday with people, was the theme of authenticity, which I think Venus squaring Jupiter will probably help be alive in us also. Yeah, just to throw that in there. But yes, yeah, wow, Michele, thank you. Thank you for presencing every single thing you just said. Thank you.
appreciate it. I'm so glad to be here.
Mm-hmm. Michele with one L.
I'm the 1L Michele. Yes. So what's alive for me right now? I very much feel similar to Michele in terms of being in this place of deconstruction and reconstruction. And as you know, many of us have heard about the Chinese character that represents crisis also represents opportunity. It feels like we're in this portal, this liminal in-between place, post-pandemic. Many of the systems have been shaken apart, disconnected, supply chains have been impacted. Everything has really changed. And so it's a true opportunity to come together in an entirely new way. I'm also seeing a lot of change. I'm seeing ancestral land acknowledgements now in so many places. When I was a kid, that was, not a thing. And so that's so amazing. I'm seeing Martha Stewart, who's in her 80s, on the cover of Sports Illustrated. That's widening the view of what we're perceiving as beauty. And that's on a larger cultural level. So I'm perceiving change, I'm seeing change, and I feel like we're in an amazing place of opportunity in this liminal space to really come together in a new way. And like you said, Martha, just the whole polarization bit, that's also very alive in me. It's just catching myself in those places of polarization and really working to just widen the field. And to me, that is so much of what the divine feminine energy is. It's just this energy of spaciousness, inclusiveness, expansion. It's sort of holding all of it without judgment. And, that just kind of brings me to this concept of logos and eros, logos being the masculine principle, and eros, the feminine, the re-enchantment of the world. And so that is, what excites me and what I'm passionate about is just being part of this beautiful re-enchantment as we invite in more of the divine feminine. And I loved, I think it was Melanie Reinhardt. I can't remember if it was Melanie or if it was Heather that was just talking about reweaving the masculine and the feminine and just moving forward, bringing this time of this masculine energy that we've been living in, bringing the good and positive points from that forward and bringing that feminine energy together and just working from both of those energies. Yeah. So that's what's alive for me now.
Beautiful. Thank you. So I did have one person ask a question, which I feel like now is maybe a good time to bring that in. The question itself is essentially, what is the difference between the sacred, the divine feminine and the sacred feminine? And I actually sent that question to Anne Baring, and she sent me an answer, which I can read to the group maybe after we talk a little bit. But where I would actually love to go with that right now is, even I would broaden that question, maybe back it up a little bit. I would love to hear from each of you, if you have a sense of a difference for yourself between the divine feminine and the sacred feminine. I personally don't distinguish the two. but I would love to hear any thoughts if you all have any thoughts on that. But to broaden the question, I would love to hear your thoughts on what is the divine feminine, and maybe even what is the difference between the divine feminine and just the feminine? Is there a distinction for you there? I feel more of a distinction in myself on that comparison, but yeah, so I guess the question is, can you speak to anything around your sense of these terms? Feminine, divine feminine, sacred feminine. What is that? And Vanessa, yes, you jump in too. So who would like to start on that question? Anybody?
I can jump in if there's.
Go for it.
And it's an interesting question. And what lands right away for me is this distinction between embodied and essential spirit. And what I mean by that is that the sacred feminine, I think, reflects the embodied experience of the feminine in the same way that everything is sacred. And we tend to forget that in the mundane world of doing laundry and dishes and, relating to paying bills and living our life. We lose touch with the essential nature that the earthly experience is a sacred experience. And when I think of the divine feminine, it, for me, reflects a connection to the essential spirit of the feminine, which is one with unconditional love. And that can be, an aspect of the sacred feminine. It can be an aspect of an embodied experience, but it has more to do with the calling that we all have to embody unconditional love on earth, to learn how to do that in our relationships, in our families, in our work environment. And in that way, then the divine feminine gets brought down into the sacred feminine, into the earthly embodied experience. That's what comes to me.
Awesome. Thank you. Jennifer?
Thank you. I just want to add on to that. I feel that the whole reason that the world got so screwed up was for the lack of the divine feminine. So the return of the divine feminine, I feel, is really also coming up from the earth. It's not something, it's something that we already are, but we're coming, it cannot be denied. It's the nurture, it is the care of every single living thing. It is that place that cannot see war anymore, that cannot see separation, that cannot see poverty, that there's, for to have somebody not taken care of at all and be in poverty and be in this place of complete alone separation, that is, to me, what is happening now is the big release of divine feminine coming back and being established as divine justice. As the mama bear that refuses to see anything but all nurture for everyone, anywhere, in any situation, all the time, every time. And I too don't see the difference between divine feminine and sacred feminine. I think that it is only one force. And as always, it needs the masculine, we all need each other. It's just such a beautiful system that was created for us that we are part of. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I just want to answer Anne's question here. What I mean by polarity are those questions of, maybe we could say, the liberals, the conservatives, the light, the dark, you against me. To me, that's always the polarity that I'm referring to. I don't know if anybody else wants to address that.
Yes. I want to just respond to what you said earlier, Jennifer, and then I can respond also about that. But yes, what you were just saying, I could easily cry. And it is precisely what Anne Baring talks about in her interview. If anybody hasn't watched it, definitely highly recommend it. I think, to be completely honest, I think that conversation with Anne might be one of the most profound conversations I've had in my entire life so far. It's not to be missed. It's really something. Yeah, and polarity for me is the sense that there are opposites in the world. There are two sides of a coin, and when we get locked into either going fully into one direction and not coming back to the middle of any side, quote unquote, then inevitably there's imbalance. And so what I feel in that is that we're in a time where we're being called to come back to the balance and not to ignore the polarities. It feels important to also stretch all the way, like fully into the divine feminine, and fully into the divine masculine, and fully into the divine person, whatever it is, all of the above. And then eventually come back to center. So I don't know if that answers your question, Anne, but feel free to say something if it did not. Yeah, if you can type in the chat maybe, and that would be awesome if you're able to do that. So does anybody else want to answer the question about divine feminine, divine feminine, sacred feminine, feminine, these terms? Michele Cipressi.
Yeah. So I feel like, to me, the distinction between the word divine and sacred also don't sort of discern too much difference. But the way I see the divine or sacred feminine, or the divine and sacred masculine, is a place of real balance and a place of responding appropriately to whatever's happening. And so what's happened on the planet is the toxic masculine has been dominating, and we've been coming from this place of the toxic masculine. And I think sometimes there's this sense of sort of bashing the masculine, and it's so important to fully honor and respect the sacred masculine, the divine masculine, the sacred feminine, the divine feminine. And so that's the place of where it's total balance. The toxic masculine, we're moving into shadow. And so just honoring that place. And I see, the work ahead is just continuing to move as much as we can to wholeness in that place of balance within ourselves, with both the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, it being an energetic that's available to all persons of all genders. And finding whatever portals and whatever ways we can to cultivate within ourselves that place of balance in both the sacred masculine and sacred feminine.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And Catriona, did you want to say something?
I'd like to add on that. It's so interesting. So, okay, first of all, the sacred and divine feminine, I got a sense in my body that was like, okay, the divine feminine is essence. And it is to me, it's a lot about what you said, Jennifer, the nurturing, that we care for every single frickin' one. And it is sacred. And it is not a wishy-washy fairy, yay, rainbow, it's sacred. And that, to me, there's an energy in that as a white person on Germanic lands with no ancestral lineage anymore, it is something that I was privileged to sort of watch from afar in Indigenous cultures. When they say sacred, it's not to be messed with. And that's something that I miss around this. Like, I'm having shivers now. Like, And that's the same for both the masculine and the feminine and the person. And it is sacred. And let's not mess about anymore. Let's get real. Let's get serious. Let's get into the darkness to bring stuff to light, because that every single ant on this planet is sacred. So yeah, there's a lot of, like, I can feel a lot of energy rise. And the second thing that I'd like to just personally for me, I have dropped the word toxic in this context, because I feel it's become an in word, where really it's wounded to me. Just my personal thing. It's a wounded feminine. It's a wounded masculine. It's out of balance. It's out of kilter. It's been hurt so much on both sides, on any side of any polarity. There's been so much pain. And then I don't want to go and point fingers at myself or at any being going, oh yeah, you're in this toxic energy. No, you're wounded. And we need to set this right. So that's just my 2 cents to this.
That really reflects some things that come up next week in the Divine Masculine conversations. It's something that when I was, this is like, I'm jumping ahead here, but it feels really important to name it, so I will. So the co-facilitator for next week is Mark Tollefson, and he and I recorded the interview I did of him, right? And we ended up actually recording it in 2 sections, just for practical reasons, because we were halfway done, and then suddenly my 16-year-old texted me and I had to go. It's like, okay, we have to stop. So then we had a break of about a week in between these 2 sections of that conversation. And what ended up happening was actually that week gave us this really beautiful opportunity to reflect on various aspects of the first half of the conversation. And then we were able to address it really transparently in the second half. And part of what that conversation ended up being about is exactly this, right? It's that in the first half of the conversation, there was a moment, I don't even remember the details, to be honest, but I just remember the feelings. There was a moment where I felt triggered by something he said. And I didn't agree with it, or there was some way that I recognized later that if we hadn't been on camera, if I hadn't been getting recorded, if we had just been the 2 of us alone having a personal conversation about the same topic, I probably would have, I might have let myself go into that, I would say, wounded, more triggered place, right? And one thing that was so fascinating to both of us was that because we were on camera, because we were doing it for this symposium, this is me being really transparent and honest, but it feels like it will maybe further this conversation, further this healing. So I'm doing this. What I reflected on was, I said to him, I knew that your intentions were purely good because we were on camera and we were doing this for a professional thing. Interestingly, if it had been on personal terms, I wouldn't necessarily have 100,000% known that your intentions were good. So then he said, what if we all assumed all the time that our intentions are always good? Like, what would that do? Transform everything, right? And so that's what you're saying, Catriona, is bringing me back to is this feeling of when we're acting from a more wounded or hurting place. I would say 99.999% of the time, our intentions are still good, even if we're acting out. Still, we're coming from a good basic place. And I hear what you're saying about we can start to blame ourselves or blame another person. And I think one component in that is that we're suddenly jumping to the conclusion that their intentions are somehow off, or our own intentions. I don't know. That's just one piece maybe that's in there. And and having worked with, you know, literal actual sociopaths, literal actual serial rapists, that was a big part of what I did in my work as a social worker. I can say, from a professional standpoint, the existence of true, actual people who really do not care and are not coming from a good place is minuscule in the human population. It's teeny, 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 tiny. So, and that's what I did. I testified on the stand about, you know, X, Y, or Z person who has done this horrible thing. And it was virtually never that they didn't actually care, right? So I can assume that most of us care most of the time, and we're coming from a good place. So yeah, I'm throwing that in there. Cool. Vanessa or anyone else want to jump in with any thoughts?
I would love to jump in, and I've actually forgotten what the original question was.
It was divine feminine, sacred feminine, but
yes,
jump in
thank you for the reminder. I've been so just involved in absorbing all of these incredible thoughts and inspirations, and just loving what is coming up for everybody. For me, I think I feel similarly to some of what has already been mentioned, in that the feminine, divine feminine, sacred feminine, for me, that's all one and the same. And I also love how each of you have described that. And I agree with all of it. You know, it's all and everything, you know. And one of the things that I'm personally really feeling around the feminine right now is the expression, you know, the various expressions of the feminine through us. And for me personally, and I believe that we touched on this in the sharing circle yesterday, for me personally, the expression that I'm really feeling into and being called to is the leaning back. I think that we've been in this period of leaning in and resisting, and, you know, a lot of force and power, and trying to move upstream. And for me, it's all about allowing ourselves to flow downstream, you know, just flowing, that expression of the feminine as flowing and going with the flow and leaning back and allowing. And with that, I think a lot of, for me, that ties into the discussion about the polarity. I think when you lean back and you just are part of the flow, then that polarity disappears. That resistance disappears. It's like the water flowing around the boulders. The water isn't resisting the boulders, it's just flowing. And little by little, molecule by molecule, that boulder starts to dissolve. So that's what's feeling alive for me in the moment.
Beautiful. Thank you. I'm noticing, Sandra, your comment of maybe instead of assuming intentions are always good, we can honor the discord and gently address it. Yeah, I love that also. That it doesn't need to always be perfect and harmonious in every single moment. And that this is speaking for myself. I know that part of what we're here, I think that part of what we're here to do is to work out these balances, and that's partly being human, because we are human and we're here to be human. So I resonate with that personally. And then I'm reading another comment here by Peter. Expressions of toxic woundedness as aspects both of the divine feminine and divine masculine Our perceptions are not those of the divine. So what we judge as toxic is potentially excluding an aspect of the divine that itself is just accepting and forgiving and allowing. As Vanessa says, it's not about raising ourselves up, but dropping ourselves down. Empathy circles, deep listening, John Young, and deep nature connection, animal communication. Yes. So yes. And again, another preview for next week. There are a number of speakers next week who are very active in the deep nature connection world, including John Young, including Mark, and several of, other people. Lots of the people next week are very much into deep nature connection. So next week is about the divine masculine, but also the theme of connecting with ourselves as Earth is a big one next week. Really beautiful conversations. Yeah. Okay. And anything else that feels alive in this moment before I'm going to pull up the email I have from Anne Baring just so I can read that. But while I'm doing that, is anybody else Michelle, you want to say something?
I love it, Martha, and I can't wait to hear what Anne had to say. I was reading her book, The Divine, this week, and also doing a lot of work around operating from the wound, and so several reflections came up for me. I really think this is an important part of being able to access the divine feminine. And Martha, what you shared was such a beautiful example of where like the wound can arise. And when the wounded feminine arises, when wounded masculine arises, whatever that is, there's always going to be pain and there's always going to be a deficiency. And the recognition of wholeness, or even the perspective of forgiveness, is a matter of not necessarily rejecting that, not operating from that, but instead the extension of transparency or authenticity or vulnerability is an opening into actually healing that as it's being seen. And I think for me, it's been about expanding my capacity to bear witness to that when it arises in me, to to recognize that whoever is triggering that wound is showing me where the pain still exists inside of me. And in that, if there are expectations that I have or judgments or things, like that is where I can do the work, to release those. And the divine feminine would, in that unconditional loving of that, is not rejecting of that experience, or instead it's really a welcoming of, oh, this is here right now. And I feel like your response in the interview just opened the field for more healing in being honest with what was arising, not judging yourself or for how we might otherwise compartmentalize or try and, put on in this situation, this is how we would deal with it. But it's like opening up to the vulnerability of naming what's here, expanding our capacity to feel what's here and to recognize that it's just showing an unhealed place. It's where we ignore that. I think that it continues to perpetuate the woundedness and the behavior. And then, and one of my mentors gave me that warning this year of like, you should eliminate that T word from your vocabulary. If you really want to heal this, if you really want to be able to engage and not operate from your own woundedness, it's not as though that's like the byproduct. That's the effect of the woundedness operating in the world. And the only way for me to heal that is to open to it and to be able to recognize its presence and then to do something differently with how I respond to it.
What's the T word that you're referring to?
Toxic.
That's
So it's it's truly an effect of a culture or a behavior. It's not that it's not there. It is not a part of the essential truth of the masculine or the feminine. It exists for both energetic counterparts. I can be as much in that kind of identity if I'm operating from the wound as anyone else can be. That's what I, and I recognize that, like, we, at least for me, the space of accepting all of that inside of me as it like doesn't exist outside if it's not inside too, has been the place where I'm finding my work, because like that's where I can actually do something about, I can't change someone else, and labeling them as toxic or wounded only externalizes it from a perspective that I can't do anything about. But having like the universe force me at least back to myself time and time again, that I can never resolve what hurts through another, has been kind of my saving grace and my spiritual ground for the time being until I evolve more.
And I'm just, what you're saying is, to me, sounding so Venus opposite Pluto. Like coming back to the reflecting the power that is actually me or you. I mean, it's right here that so I think what you're partly saying is, when we externalize, then we're disempowering ourselves in a way that's just not real.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. I get chills, full body. And that's a part of remembering the heart. It's like, it's incredibly tender to realize that there is no like other out there that I can, be, if I'm having a fight with my partner, and I'm like slowing myself down enough to catch up with the part of myself that is wounded, is operating, like, we are such perfect mirrors, human beings, for one another. And there isn't a whole lot that I can do to try and get him to see all the things I want him to see about himself so that he can change. Like, that is a futile exercise in suffering. And I've been really pushed back inside to come to a place of like, oh no, this is in me. This is something I can see. This is something I can heal. I can't resolve it through him, but there might be something in the relationship, through our communication, through vulnerability, through authenticity, that can bring about a healing. And I think your story was a great example of that.
Yeah. And here we are with Venus going into an opposition with Pluto right this second. Yep. Jennifer, did you want to say something?
I do want to say something, because I work closely with Mother Mary and some of the other Lady Masters. And I feel what I've seen in my community and with myself is a deep healing of the heart, a deep tenderizing, coming into the Divine Mother's womb of nothingness. It's like being reborn, and the heart is being reborn. I really feel that I don't think I know a human being that hasn't had a mother wound, a wound of it. Just, our mothers did the best they can, or we didn't have a mother, but they just couldn't get it right because it wasn't in their capacity. And this, coming back into the heart of the mother, to me, just Michele, you kind of just ignited that acknowledgement that I want to make, that I feel that we are doing that no matter what our gender is, no matter where we are in life. We've got to come back through this tender, it's like a tenderizing of the heart, opening up again. And it's expressed in so many different ways that we've all been sharing today. But it's just, to me, really important to let yourself be tenderized, to let yourself not know it all, to come into that place of just being without agenda, a baby soul again, and kind of being reborn through the heart. Just wanted
Beautiful.
to say that.
Thank you so much. Yes. I want to encourage everybody to be listening. I was about to encourage people to listen to your talk because you go into this more deeply in a really beautiful way, but I'll now extend that to all of the talks. It's not just yours. And I do want to read Anne's email really quickly, and then I want to answer a question, a very important, good question I'm seeing here. But to just come back to Anne Baring. So yeah, if anybody hasn't watched her talk, beautiful, amazing. She's 91 years old. She is an Oxford scholar, and she's written some very classic books on the divine feminine. She's a gift to our planet. That's what I'll say. We all are, but she's beyond amazing. Okay. So she said, sacred describes something that is holy, perhaps a church, a shrine, or a place of pilgrimage, or even as I describe it, the earth herself. In The Dream of the Cosmos, that's her latest book, which is phenomenal, I describe the whole universe and this planet as a sacred order, with ourselves as part of it. The divine feminine is more to do with the divine aspect of deity or the Godhead, something that should be there but isn't at the moment. In the past, it would have been related to a goddess like Isis or the Hebrew goddess Asherah before she was eliminated in 623 BCE. It shouldn't be used in connection with the earth, as that would elevate the earth to the level of Godhead itself. So yeah, that's the gist of her answer. And I do want to answer this very important question. Jean, you're asking about the meanings of some of the labels being used here, such as cis, and then you're saying, how does that vary from the other labels like heterosexual? Yes, incredibly important question. I'm really sorry we're using those words without explaining them. So the word cisgender means essentially, in my understanding, but anybody correct me if I'm wrong, basically, if you are born identified as a girl and you still identify as female or as a girl, your gender identity matches what you were identified as at birth, then you are called quote unquote cisgender. Transgender is if you were born identified as one gender and you realize later that actually you are a different, and the other gender or another gender. Non-binary is, I'm speaking here from, I'm nervous about answering this because I wish there wasn't more of an expert here answering this question, but I'm doing my best. So please, anybody correct me in the chat or anything if I'm misspeaking. Non-binary means a person who maybe identifies as gender, not on the gender binary, not feminine or masculine. They want to be considered more in the middle of gender, the gender spectrum or the gender identity world. Gender fluid tends to be somebody who feels that their gender identity is fluid. It goes, feminine, masculine, non-binary, all of the above. And everybody has can have their own identity and own definition to any words. So I'm certainly not attempting to give a label to anybody. And then, so that's gender identity, which is distinct and separate from sexual orientation. So sexual orientation so gender identity is, do I feel my gender identity is feminine, masculine, in the middle, all of the above. That's gender identity. That's separate from sexual orientation, which is who am I attracted to sexually? Who do I tend to fall in love with? And those can even be distinguished, right? But just to simplify it, sexual orientation has to do with either being heterosexual, bisexual, pansexual, asexual, gay, lesbian, straight. All of those words have to do with sexual orientation, and probably you're familiar with most of what those words mean. Pansexual maybe is the least known one, I guess. In a certain sense, pansexual is I'm attracted to anybody and anyone regardless of their gender. The gender is not really what is drawing me to them. It's who they are as a human or a being. Heterosexual is typically you identify as one gender and you're attracted to the opposite gender, etc. So I don't know if anybody wants to add to that answer or change any of my answers. Feel free.
Martha, I just wanted to speak to her further question because that really fascinates me, and I think it's a great discussion. When does our current labeling, instead of just raising awareness of differences, lead to another separation between humans? And I'm really curious to know if anybody has any thoughts on that.
Yes.
Go for it.
What I stumble upon again and again is that there's levels to this. And I often find that, I don't know how to say this, especially in English. I often find that we're trying to address a deep inner issue on a logical and linguistic, is that a word? Level. And it does not solve the problem in depth. And to me, that's why I'm, again, Martha, this space and this symposium and all your work is so sacred to me, because this is an energy, it's almost like a cultural thing that's not of nationalities or something, but it's a new culture emerging where we feel into these issues. We sense, whoa, yeah, shivers, like we sense into each other. Because there's woundedness in me, having been labeled now as somebody who definitely, of course, always dismisses people who do not identify as a cis woman. I don't even, like, these terms to me often feel so alien, because I don't feel the person behind them anymore. I don't feel the soul. I don't know. I wish for space to feel into what is here now. And that can almost not be put into words. And I know we're all searching, and it's great. And at the same time, yeah, there's levels. And my great wish is that we start looking at this as a holistic issue with several layers, rather than, okay, in German, it's gone crazy from my perspective, to be very frank. It's absolutely insane now, because it's wrecking our language, and it is taking everything out of a very meaningful language of Goethe and Schiller that was powerful once, and now it's and I know it is a step towards that. And at the same time, if we do not come back to the heart, as Jennifer said, if the tenderness isn't also being transmitted, yeah, then I feel grief in this moment. Enough said.
Thank you very, very much. And one of the speakers who's here as an attendee is Nikki Kuttner, also German. So Nikki, I asked you offline if you want to come on and give your own answer. You're a speaker in week 3, but I feel like you would be like the best person that I could. You immediately came to mind. Let me put it like that. Do you want to come on or not? You can give me a yay or a nay. I can bring you on the panel if you want to answer this question also. And if you don't want to, that's completely fine.
I saw a message from Nikki saying she just saw your question and she thinks you did a great job in your explanation.
Okay. Okay. Well, Nikki, if you want to come on, just let me know and I will bring you on. Yeah, and these conversations we're going to be having lots of these, especially in week 3, and I mean throughout this whole month. But this is a big part of what week 3 is about. And And so it's a great conversation to continue. And I can just say from the perspective of my 16-year-old who is transgender, you know, the labels are really important, really actually life. I wouldn't say, they're crucial to the lives of lots of people. So including my 16-year-old. So I would be worried about eliminating labels because at least in this moment, for a lot of people, they are keeping them alive, literally. So I'll just throw that in there. And yeah, I think it's really, really important to have all of these conversations.
And I'd just like to add to that, you know, here we are, you know, discussing these polarities, both and. You know, I really relate so strongly to all that you've said, Catriona, and I really relate to what you're saying as well, Martha. I also have a non-binary child, and the labels are important, and I can see both, and we can hold all of it and know that, you know, we are all source, we're all fractals of source. And, you know, the farther out we get, you know, the more polarized we get. And that's just part of it all these fractals of belief. And, you know, each of us are at different places, and we're going to find the wisdom that works for us in this moment, you know, that's going to honor our experience and, you know, deepen our connection to whatever it is we're really needing to connect to. So, you know, what a great dialogue. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think I'm thinking about, you know, what are the pros and cons of using labels? I think one thing I would give one on the pro side of using labels I'm thinking of is it gives us something to work with, something to talk about, something, it names something. Like, for example, when we're talking about these assumptions that get made about us, like Michele, you're saying, well, I don't know if I identify as a cisgender woman. Similarly, with sexual orientation, I'm speaking for myself. If there's this assumption that we are X, Y, or Z thing in terms of how we identify, when I suddenly have a label that I can say, oh yes, I am not heterosexual, then it frees me up to be all of who I actually am. And I don't need to stay in the box or the label that people might assume about me. So that's one pro. And I do feel, I do see, I also have this longing to just be with the soul, be with the light, be all of that. Yeah. So I think it's a great conversation all the way around.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, Martha. And one of the links in the chat was to a list of, you know, terms. And as we have a lot of new language around identity, what comes to mind for me is how, astrologically speaking, this axis that we were talking about, Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, Aquarius, is all about identity. And in the same way that, you know, we undergo different levels of transformation as a part of the process of evolving, each and every one is absolutely necessary to that stage of evolution. And we're talking about collective evolution of the foundations of life itself, you know, mother, father, masculine, feminine, and that evolving into more spectrums of gender and sexual orientation, identity, family systems, family units being transformed, communities being transformed, language being transformed, everything having to change. And yet, like, I feel like it's a necessary discomfort, right? It's going to bring up discomfort when we don't feel like we know how to identify with those words, or we don't feel confident or comfortable, or we feel challenged by, you know, being identified in one way or another way. Like it's all a part of the soup. It's like caterpillar, soup, butterfly, and everyone is going to be at a different place in their life. And I feel like it's such a beautiful conversation to be able to hold all of it and say, yeah, I don't have that experience. I have that experience, and here's how it's serving in the healing in my own family or in my own experience. And here's the places where it challenges me to grow because I don't yet know where I belong in this conversation. And the divine feminine, which is why we're all here together, is like, can hold it all, because she's the unidentified space and field, right? If we think about the womb is a dark, black, empty space of creation upon which all souls are born through, it is that space that weaves us delicately together without conscious control. And it is probably the most feared void of our cosmos, because it's not known or understood. And it's like, that is a part of that energy of the feminine that can hold all of this and love all of it and not understand it. And, so much of this is like, we don't know. We really don't know. We don't know what we are without these labels. We don't know how important they are to others to build a sense of safety and self. And we don't know what the impact of this change in our world is on like our permission to be ourselves, to be free, right? To be liberated. And yet the divine feminine, I think of the mother goddess, or, I love Jennifer bringing in, Mother Mary, the divine mother, because I think she had to have immense faith in what she was called to do, which was to love, like to love her assignment, to love what she was invited to bring forth into the planet. And I think that's a part of what we're all being invited into in this space too, to be able to see so many different perspectives and hold it all and meet the places inside of us where discomfort arises, where unknown arises, where we have limitations in our being,
Absolutely. Beautiful. Yes. And I'm really actually so glad that this conversation on the divine feminine, in one version of it could go on this very beautiful, easy, I don't know, we're all love and light and we're just being feminine in a very stereotypical way. And I don't think that's what we're here to do. So I feel like this conversation has led to a lot of our learning edges and our growing edges, certainly in myself. And I would, if I had to choose one or the other, it would definitely be this. So wonderful. We're getting long on our time here. So I would love to close with,
I just want to say one thing before you
yes,
close.
please.
I just want to tag on what Michele just said. And I am loving this conversation too. I just think it's been brilliant that, I just got such a hit that the labels are necessary for those that are needing to know their own identity now, but we are really all coming back to our true identity of oneness. And that's what this whole symposium is about, right? It's like we're going to get to a place where the labels aren't going to be necessary, like you said, Michele. But right now, for those that are me, that are needing to know who they are, I am so grateful that there are labels. And those labels are going to be transformed into the oneness that we are becoming. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I can resonate with that quite a lot. And I'm not saying that's the right answer either. If that isn't the right answer for anybody, that's great too.
Yes.
There's no right or wrong. Okay. Yes. But I personally very strongly resonate with what you just said. Yes. Wonderful. So I would love to do one more go round briefly, and like 1, 2, 3 sentences, and again, come back, drop back into our hearts and our bodies. And, you know, in this moment, if you could send a wish out into existence, into this community, and then just into our whole world, into literally all of everything, everywhere, through all of time, all of space. What's a prayer or a wish that you would like to send out now? And, you know, each of us here on the panel can be saying these out loud, but if anybody wants to be typing any of them, please feel free for that as well. And yes, I agree. This conversation has gone by so fast. It could go on for a whole day, I'm sure. But we're here for a whole month and beyond. So please keep it up. Keep up the conversation. Okay. Who would like to go first? Jennifer.
Truth is the kingdom. Love is the power.
Thank you. Michelle with 1 L.
May we move increasingly into our wholeness within and without.
Thank you. Catriona, Michelle, Vanessa.
May we follow the deepest desires of our heart to return to source.
May we return to the tenderness of our hearts, while at the same time fiercely loving everything back into wholeness and well-being.
I love it. Thank you. Vanessa.
My wish and deep intention for us all is that we are able always to feel held and nurtured and feel that unconditional love of the divine feminine that is part of all of us and connects all of us.
Wonderful. I'm just going to read a little bit from the chat here. Unconditional love for self and the world. Thank you, Louise. And may all be comfortable speaking their truth and be received gently. Yes. And my wish in this moment, my prayer is that that we are able, each in our own ways, to be open and allowing of this divine feminine, sacred feminine energy to flow as us, whatever our gender identity is, and allow the divine masculine to be flowing, the sacred masculine to be flowing as us, the divine person to be flowing as us, sacred person. And similar to what you're saying, Vanessa, that we all feel held infinitely, completely, unconditionally loved, because we are, as part of the earth, as part of the cosmos, as part of the all that is, as one, as each other, connected, infinitely connected, inevitably. And may this healing and this time together and this continuing conversation and this community bless and send highest good to everything. And so it is. Amen. Thank you all so much for being here. And yes, so tomorrow, Friday, we have 3 of the paid optional workshops, one with Catriona on storytelling, amazing. One with Vanessa on sacred belly dance. And in between those 2 is going to be, not to be missed, a workshop with Kelly Hunter, incredibly well-known astrologer. And she'll be doing a workshop on the divine feminine in your natal astrology chart. So she's going to be looking at Venus, the moon, and Black Moon Lilith in the chart. And yeah, really, I can't even express what an opportunity that is. So anybody at all interested in that, please be there. And in week 3, Michele with 1L is doing a workshop and Jennifer's doing a workshop. So yes, please come to all of that. And Catriona, you have something coming up that's not related to this symposium. Do you want to very briefly mention it?
I just put it in the chat. It's about naughty girls, about pirate queens, about Kali, and my good friend Kirsten and I tell you stories about no nice girls. And you can choose your own price. We'd be happy to have you. It's going to be an amazing evening. I look forward to it. I'm really excited.
Awesome. And I'll put that link with this video, and I'll put that link also in Catriona's page in the Teachable site. So that's not related to the symposium, but sounds amazing. Awesome. Very good. Thank you, everybody.